Okay, class. This is the last lecture in this whole module. And the last lecture in the two mini lecture series about sustainability. In the previous mini lecture on sustainability, I introduced sustainability kind of in concept and in measurement in general. And now I'm moving to sustainability in our food and agriculture sector. So this was the last slide. So we think about it, what's a food system? A food system we've talked about already is all of these components of the production sector, the value addition and the services to agriculture and food, but also the related systems. A sustainable food system is one that delivers food security and nutrition for all in such a way that the economic, social, and environmental bases to generate food security and nutrition for future generations are not compromised. So this is a definition from the Food and Agriculture Organization, FAO, in 2018, has food security and nutrition as the kind of the natural resources that generate food security and nutrition. And the bases are not expressed in capitals, but in these broader terms of economic, social, and environmental. We think about also a sustainable food system. We think about a sustainable diet. There are two definitions here, one from the Food and Agriculture Organization. One is diets that have low environmental impacts, which contribute to food and nutrition security and to healthy life for present and future generations. So that's a definition from the Food and Agriculture Organization, saying there should be a low drawdown of natural capital, you might say, and that we have healthy lives for future and present generations. So this is a little bit between kind of weak sustainability and strong sustainability. Jessica Fanso's definition is sustainable diets promote environmental and economic stability through low impact and affordable foods, while at the same time improving public health through adequate nutrition. She distinctly doesn't have social sustainability here. That might be an oversight. And she thinks about affordable foods as being part of sustainable diet, so that there is some element of a equity notion in her definition. One of the things in the Fanso art paper, and this is the paper that is on the reading list and on eClass, is can we have sustainable and healthy diets? So what's the evidence that we can actually do both, or do we really trade these off? And let's look at the outside boxes. First, let's look at the lower right-hand box. So this is a diet which is unsustainable and unhealthy. These are diets in general that have high energy intake, high intakes of vegetable oil, high intakes of sugar, and high intakes of animal-sourced proteins, especially beef, and are low in their dietary diversity. So low in the number of food products which are consumed, especially low in the number of plant-based products which are consumed. So we can think about these types of diets which have a big kind of human or ecological footprint on the environment, and that animal-sourced proteins, animal-sourced products are especially that way, with a pretty high impact in that you need to grow, often are growing food crops and then feeding them to animals and then sourcing your food from animals. That can be, so that's for a few reasons is bad for our diet, often leading to obesity problems, and also hard on the planet. Let's think about what's the kind of the alternative in terms of healthy and sustainable. Would be diets with more fruit and vegetables, so more diverse consumption, but also more plant alternatives to the animal source food. So recognizing that there are important kind of protein and other micronutrient content of animal source foods that we benefit from, looking for foods which are substitutes for those. So there are more and more things like oat milk and almond milk, which are substituting for dairy products. What are the plant alternatives to meat? So we're seeing more and more things like lentils in our diets, but also products which more look like meat that are plant-based. And having less animal source foods, less sugars, and less vegetable oils. Also things which are good for us and also kind of lower footprint on the environment. There are healthy, unsustainable diets. So for perhaps the paleo diet might be one of these. High amounts of dairy, lean meat and fish, and seafood, high amounts of nuts, fruits, and vegetables. So there are diets which are good for us in terms of our health, but actually still have a pretty high footprint on the planet. And then there are sustainable diets which aren't healthy. So that's when we get starch. Almost all of our diet is in terms of starches and grains. And also high consumption of sugar and salt as cheap sources of energy, but low dietary diversity and low amounts of animal sourced foods or their plant-based substitutes. So if you think about many parts of Africa, like the photograph we saw of Chad, basically small amounts of rice, which may be rice and other staples, which may be sustainably produced, but actually are not healthy for us. Okay, so now moving into, so that's sort of sustainable food. So another cut at this I want to provide in this lecture is about sustainability. We have the global agreement about sustainable development goals. So these are the goals which are set for the global community for the period 2015 to 2030. So we're about 5 years into the Sustainable Development Goals. These are the successor of the Millennium Development Goals of 2000 to 2015. So that's why they're called the Millennium Development Goals. Sustainable Development Goals are these 17, and they are agreed upon by almost every country in the world as universal goals that all countries ought to try to achieve, and that if countries and these goals ought to be taken account when countries are interacting with each other, whether it's in form of trade or aid. So you can see the range of things. The top goals of no poverty and no hunger are seen as, in a sense, most important and fundamental for everything else. And that's really that goal 2 of no hunger is critical for us, but also thinking about in many places people are hungry because they are poor. So goals 1 and 2 are also bound up a lot with agriculture and food. But we'll see in a minute that actually these run across food and agriculture. So just a brief comment that what about these MDGs, sort of the SDGs? As I said, they're a successor to the Millennium Development Goals. The Millennium Development Goals were really seen as kind of in many ways, a top-down imposition by developed countries who were seeking to get more harmony in the way that they engaged with developing countries. So that if the idea was if developing countries could kind of sign on to some goals, then they could be assisted by more advanced countries toward those goals. It was seen as a fairly top-down exercise, also seen as disregarding many things that are important. So when we went to the SDGs, there are a few principles there. One is that SDGs should be universal, so every country should seek to attain these goals, not just be seen as what poor countries should do and what they could be helped with, but that are seen as universal across the world. They're seen as transformative in that we really can't achieve any of these goals on their own, but they should be achieved together and holistic. So that rather than splitting, there's more idea of kind of cross-cutting development of societies. There's the goals are founded on these 5 P's: people and people's well-being, planet and having a healthy planet, partnership that countries, private sector, non-governmental organizations should work together rather than kind of at odds to each other. There should be a shared principle of prosperity, that prosperity for one country is good for everyone, and peace. They are aspirational. They are unlikely to be achieved by 2030. They were seen as being stretch goals in a sense. And one way to understand that is that actually no European Union country has achieved the SDGs. I think that Denmark has come closest. It's received a grade of 79%. I think Canada is about 74 out of 100. So the goal out of 100, which would be absolute achievement of all of the goals, there's basically some B pluses in the world, and many countries which are Ds. So you can look at this link that I've given here, this EU dashboards, for more information and kind of compare countries. The Sustainable Development Goals, the 17 of them have 169 targets, so kind of an average of about 10 for each. So these are breaking down the goals into things which can be, which are kind of more manageable, and then indicators of success. So how would we measure success, for example, in no poverty? How do we manage success in no hunger? So indicators of success, 230 of those. So this is the last thing I wanted to say about Sustainable Development Goals relative to food and agriculture is, I'm drawing upon this paper from 2018 from the Food and Agriculture Organization about transforming food and agriculture to achieve the Sustainable Development Goals. They have these, I think, 20 actions, you can count them, down the left side that they think should be taken to achieve Sustainable Development Goals. So I'm just going to read the first 3. Facilitate access to productive resources, finance, and services. So that there should be, people should have access to these things, which means that they should be available in markets. If they're purchase assets or finance, there should be credit arrangements that are available, services in terms of, say, regulatory services or research services. So we can see how that comes in. We should connect smallholders to markets. And so there shouldn't be privileged market access to just kind of the big commercial guys, but also the small scale farmers who may be dealing with smaller volumes, may have large use of their own products for subsistence, but whatever they're selling into the markets should be accessible to them. So you can see all of these range of actions that FAO is suggesting. And we will be grappling with several of these as we go through this class. And then the 17 goals across the top. So the goals on hunger, poverty, I say, are sort of fundamental for food and agriculture. But the other 15, including the health goals, the education goals, the gender goals, the water, service and access goals, energy goals, work goals, and workplace safety, industry, inequality, sustainable cities, sustainable consumption and production, climate action, life below water, life on land, peace and partnership with the 17 goals. And as you can see, I went through each of these and ticked off what this 2018 publication of FAO said were the main links to food and agriculture. So food and agriculture, especially for those of you working for the Sustainability Council, you can see the different things you could pick up that relative to to food and agriculture and the links with the SDGs. So you see especially poverty goals 1, 2, 5, 8, 13, 14, 15 have many, many connections. And then you can see some of these activities, tick off a lot of boxes, right? So you can see something like protect water, manage scarcity is linked to at least like 13 of 17 goals. So I'm going to stop there, and next we're moving into the new module of the class, module 3. We'll stop sharing, and we'll see you later.